last video, I was talking about wheeling and dealing and hustling to get gear. One thing I constantly saw in my journey, as you could say, of learning music production and audio engineering was everybody had all this insane gear and nobody really explained how they got it. I could never afford the insane gear, so I always did anything I could to get the gear that I have in the studio now. In my last video, I go over how a ton of the gear that I have in here is used as secondhand. I bought off Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, Reverb, anywhere I could where I could try to work some kind of deal with somebody. Or sometimes I would find somebody in town that had a lot of gear and I would just shoot out a crazy offer and just be like, how about all of this gear for this amount and I'll come pick it up right now, cash in hand. I feel like what a lot of people don't go over is how expensive equipment really is in audio, and they don't really go into depth in how deep that rabbit hole can really get. So some of the gear that I bought, for instance, for looking back here, when I look at I got my vintage pre-73s by Golden Age, both of those guys up for $200 a piece. And it was, again, one of those things where I found somebody, they were trying to sell them, I think, for $600 or $700 for the pair. And kind of the strategy that I go with is I never had a lot of money. So I would just shoot out this super low offer, right? They want $700, I send them $400. And basically through that, you're just kind of feeling out where they are on the price. Pretty much right away you can tell if somebody's willing to work with you or not. If they immediately just respond no, don't waste your time. Don't go down chasing after gear. Just say, no problem, thanks, just shooting out an offer. And a lot of times I just be crazy honest with people. I'll be like, hey, I don't have a lot of money. I really want this piece of equipment. Would you sell it for this amount of money? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I would rather spend 6 months trying to get a piece of equipment that I want to have in the studio rather than spending that extra $500, $600, $700, $800 on it. And when I say everything in my studio is pretty much wheel and deal and hustle, I mean almost everything. The monitors are a new addition. I finally pulled the trigger and decided to finance myself some nice speakers. I didn't buy these outright. Shout out to Sweetwater. They're not a sponsor of mine, but they offer 48-month interest-free financing. And if you're trying to upgrade your equipment and level up, and you're on kind of a tight budget, but you know that you can keep the work coming in, it's a good way to go. Some of the other gear that I have in here, the distressor, EL8 distressor, somebody had that listed on Facebook Marketplace and it was broken. I didn't really care if it was broken because I knew that I could just send it in to EL8, I could pay the shipping, throw a little bit of money at it, and most likely whatever was wrong with it was probably super, super small and minute. Sure enough, I was right. I picked it up for, I think, $700. Sent it into them. I think it cost me $25 to ship it. It was only $50 to fix it. They shipped it back for free. You know, I'm into it. $800, and I have an amazing piece of equipment in the studio. As you can see, there's a bunch of acoustic treatment in here. Before I bought all this GIK acoustic treatment, I would just make all of my own acoustic treatment. I think one thing that's really, really overlooked in the audio world, and especially when it comes to mixing, is nobody tells you how important it is to have a treated room. They will tell you all these videos of people mixing on mid-range, like $300 monitors, and they're saying, you know, it's just your ear, you just got to train your ears, and to an extent that is true, but if you're working in a room that's working against you, you're never going to get anywhere. So what I did is I just started building my own acoustic treatment before I could afford to get my own. So if you look up here behind my computer screen, that's just a little acoustic panel, and I just jumped onto YouTube, bought some wood, grabbed a couple tools from a friend. I didn't even have my own tools. And the funny thing is, inside of there, I was so broke at the time, I couldn't afford the proper acoustic treatment that I wanted. So that's just that panel right there. I'm going to have another one on this back wall. It's just a memory foam mattress that I cut to fit that. I doubled it. I left a little room in the middle of it, and it's just this super dense memory foam mattress, but in my opinion, it works really well for acoustic treatment because it's just so dead and it's so thick, and I just doubled it up, So I got one piece on the back like that, one piece on the front with about an inch in the middle. And all the acoustic panels that you see in here, originally, I just had a bunch of those made. And they look super professional. You know, I cut everything, you know, the nice angles. I bought some stain and painted them all. I built them all myself in my studio. And to anyone else that came in here, they looked really nice. But little did they know that it was just a memory foam mattress that I got from a secondhand store that I cut up into a bunch of small pieces that I could fit into these homemade acoustic panels. Pretty much everything in my studio has been a work in progress. I have a buy, sell, trade, upgrade mentality, right? So all the equipment I have, everything I have, I start with whatever I can afford, and I have a goal of where I want to get, what I want to get, and why I want to get there. And basically what I do is I buy what I need to get me by, and then as soon as I can find something, again, I'm usually just wheeling and dealing and throwing out crazy deals to people, trying to get them to accept an offer. As soon as I can find something better and I can get those agreed upon terms, usually what I will do in this buy, sell, trade, upgrade, I will sell whatever piece of equipment I have, use the money from that sell plus whatever on top of that to upgrade to the new piece of equipment. Now I have that new piece of equipment, and I just continued this motion as I upgraded. When I first started in here, I was on a dinky little MacBook Pro that really was underpowered for everything I was trying to do. I was working on a pair of used Behringer monitors. I don't even remember what pair. They were not good. I think I paid $250 for the pair of them. And I was working on a Focusrite, the little 2i2 input. And from there, I just continued to set my path of where I wanted to go, what I wanted to buy. And I just used this method, buying and upgrading, until I could get to the gear that I wanted to. Obviously, the whole time I'm doing this, I'm promoting myself, I'm promoting my business, I'm promoting what I'm doing. And any of the money that's coming in, I'm using most of that money for the studio. I am not paying myself that much. I'm paying myself very, very little. And the point of that is to get your studio space, to get wherever you're working to the level that you want it before you're paying yourself a big paycheck. And I think that is also another kind of misconstrued thing is, you know, I would rather pay myself very, very little and kind of get by with the skin of my teeth per se, and get my studio and my workspace to the level that I want it, rather than paying myself a bunch of money and slowly building my studio. Another really great place to buy gear, and I bought a ton of pedals, I buy and sell and trade constantly on, is reverb.com. I actually have an account where I sell a bunch of equipment, and a lot of times I'll just be trying to get myself to a piece of equipment, and I'll see a bunch of really screaming deals on stuff. So what I'll do is I'll buy that stuff, and then I'll mark it up a little bit, resell it on Reverb, and that gets me a little bit closer and a little bit closer to whatever piece of equipment that I do want to get. Another cool thing about Reverb is a lot of people leave an offer on the table where you can just make offers on their gear. And most of the time people are probably pretty stingy on where they want to be, but every once in a while you throw out an offer and somebody goes, sure. And then now all of a sudden you're getting a piece of equipment that you really wanted. For instance, I was talking about my computer. Started with a laptop in here. It was definitely not ideal, and I worked with a laptop literally as far and as long as I could, because upgrading to an iMac or a full Mac Pro desktop was not a cheap or affordable option for me for quite a long time. So basically what I did is I just kept working up. I would upgrade my computer pretty much every year, so that way I wasn't falling too far behind. And then I finally got to a position between studio work and buying and selling with the laptops where I could finally get myself an iMac Pro. Got myself the iMac Pro. It's super, super beefed up. It can pretty much handle anything that I throw at it. It's a 2017, and I did upgrade actually to the M1 for a little while, quickly reverted because I realized pretty much nothing that I was working on was ready to upgrade to the M1 yet, and it pretty much halted all of my workflow, so I had to revert, and I actually ended up finding this iMac Pro, and I was way, way happier with this computer and what it could do and the longevity that I saw in it. I probably will have this computer in the studio for the next few years. But again, buy, sell, trade, upgrade as things drop and things change and software and technology gets better. I like to try to stay on the cusp of what's coming out. I know a lot of people in the audio world don't really do that. I think that is kind of a little bit of an old school mentality because softwares and things were not staying up to date with current technology, but I feel like that is changing now where people know pretty much every time a new computer comes out that they're going to have to be new technology within 6 to 8 to 10 months, or else they might end up losing a bunch of customers over it. So even with this studio that I have, and if you look at my previous video, my studio tour, you can get a little bit of an idea of the studio. And this is a shared warehouse. It's a 1,200 square foot warehouse. It's really small. And what I did years ago was build a wall down one half of it, and I split the other half with a friend of mine because I didn't have the money to afford the entire warehouse by myself, let alone did I have the gear, the equipment, or anything in place to sustain a warehouse of that size. So again, one of those kind of mentalities of the grinding, the hustling, and trying to really get your feet sunk in is realizing where you should be spending money and how you can cut costs on things. So I'm still splitting this warehouse with a friend of mine. Luckily, he pretty much just uses it for storage, so I don't really have to worry about too much noise or too much interference there. But in the times that we have had some overlapping things, usually what I'll do is I'll come in, I'll record at nights. He'll have the warehouse during the days. But the nice part is splitting that rent cost alleviates a lot of that financial burden off of me, so then I can use more money to upgrade equipment and upgrade the studio to the level that I want. Of course, eventually my goal is to have the entire warehouse, and I can have my entire studio in a nice little 1,200 square foot warehouse out here in Oregon, and I will have the entire place not necessarily rebuilt, but I will go through and make sure that all the walls are layered up so that it is pretty much completely soundproof in the warehouse. It does have a roll-up door on the front, so that'll be a little bit tricky on how I planned that, but it would be really nice to have the entire warehouse eventually, and that is the long-term goal. In my studio tour video, I go over really every piece of equipment that I have, from my headphones that I have, where I have multiple pairs of headphones, and pretty much all of them, the Beats by Dre, the Sony Pros, the DT770 Pros, all of the things that I have in here, down to the headphones, I bought off Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, and I would go in and completely underbid whatever the person was asking, and I would just do that over and over and over and over again until I got pretty much all of the equipment I have. Even the piano that I have in here, it's a Yamaha S90. It pretty much anything that you would need for studio, in my opinion. It can handle, MIDI, synth, you can beat station, whatever you want to do. It can pretty much handle everything, and even that is, a $1,200, $1,500 keyboard, and I think I picked it up for $700 because the guy didn't have a road case for it. It was missing one knob, and I offered to go pick it up from him because it was pretty heavy. And I think the whole point of this video and my whole suggestions of mentality here is don't be afraid to be super, super cheap, in the sense of you're trying to move yourself forward. And to do that, sometimes you have to cut all the costs. You have to split your warehouse studio in half and share it with somebody else. You have to throw super lowball offers out to people that sometimes are probably insulting to them for their equipment. But all of it is with the goal and the drive that you are trying to build something for yourself. You're trying to build a studio for yourself, trying to have a creative place, whether that be to write or produce commercial music, whether that be to record bands, whether that be to write and record your own personal music. It doesn't really matter which faucet you're going through, as long as you have a clear direction of where you're trying to go, and you realize that to get there, you're going to have to not necessarily cut corners, but you're going to have to grind a little bit. You're going to have to hustle. You're going to have to wheel and deal yourself to the level you want, at least in my situation. I don't have a wealthy family. I don't have anybody I could reach out to borrow money from. At the time of building my studio out and everything I was doing, I had terrible credit and I had no way to finance anything. So it was literally start from the bottom and work my way up to where I'm at now. If you guys like this video and you like the concept of kind of the wheel and deal and how to get really good deals on things, I'd be more than stoked to make a video where I try to buy some equipment or try to get some things, and I can show you kind of the process that I'm going through, the websites I'm scouring, the the time and energy that I'm putting behind, you know, searching for these pieces of equipment or things that I want. And I still do this to this day, even though the studio has money coming in every single month. I do mentoring here that brings in a paycheck for me. I write and sell commercial music here. I write and sell and produce beats. All these different things that are all encompassing of just being able to work with music every day. But if you'd like to see a video on my process and kind of what I'm doing when I'm trying to get gear, like this video, comment, let me know. I think it would be super fun to make a video doing that regardless, so I might end up posting one. And you can go back to my studio tour video if you want to see some of the gear that I've done wheeling and dealing on. And it's literally, I'm looking around my studio right now, from my bench seat to my acoustic guitar to my cajon, my piano, my headphones, my secondhand store receiver that's powering my Auratones. Just looking around, it's pretty much everywhere. I have a ton of pedals over here, and just going through these pedals, I see DI boxes, I see a cloud lifter, I see a Sansamp. I remember that Sansamp, I found it in Eastern Oregon in the middle of nowhere, and it was super sketchy because the guy wanted me to PayPal him the money. Wasn't really sure about it. He wanted me to send him the money. He was going to mail me the pedal and send me a shipping and tracking, and I think I ended up working out something where like I gave him like 70%, and once I got the tracking number and it got here, then I would send him the rest. And I've had that pedal for years and years, and just cruising around and looking through all this, it's all just gear where I've wheeled and dealed and found really good ways to get the things that I wanted. And sometimes people just throw in a bunch of stuff. I've had people just be like, hey, do you want this whole mixing console? And I'm like, sure. What am I going to do with it? Not use it in my studio because it's from 1990 and no one would want to use that in a recording studio. But what I can do is put it in my studio and sell it or trade it. And that's another hidden gem of the wheeling, dealing, and hustling to get the gear you want. Anyways, thanks for watching. If you like these videos and you like what I'm talking about, feel free to subscribe, like, comment, anything down below. Thanks for watching.